Hey everybody, this is Deb with Truthification Chronicles, and before we get into the John Solomon stuff, I wanted to share this tweet with you because I thought this was very well said. Let me get this straight. A Congress with a 9% approval rate is trying to remove a president with a 52% approval rate that 63 million Americans voted for, as a part of an impeachment process that 51% of voters don't want, all while claiming to be fighting for the people. Isn't that great? Charlie Kirk did a good job with that one. So I'll leave the link down below if you want to share that if you're on Twitter. Anyway, but the one that I really want to share with you today is this. This is a Wall Street Journal opinion piece that was written by John Solomon. And, I was going to do this as part of another one, but I really think this needs to stand on its own because people need to hear what's in this. It really is very important what he has to say. So this is a piece that he wrote because, Adam Schiff had released some information about different phone calls and different phone numbers from different people, and one of them was John Solomon. Schiff threatens press freedom. When the surveillance state exposes a journalist and his sources, there's an instant chilling effect. And unfortunately, all journalists should be outraged at this, but it's not. And that's what's really kind of creepy about it, that there are so many journalists who are not saying anything about this happening when this is huge. This is really, really big, and they're not dealing with it. So, the Federal Bureau of Investigation's Domestic Investigations and Operations Guide, the Bible for Agents, has long recognized that journalists, the clergy, and lawyers deserve special protections because of the constitutional implications of investigating their work. Penitents who confess to a priest, sources who provide confidential information to a reporter, and clients who seek advice from counsel are assumed to be protected by a high bar of privacy, which must be weighed against the state's interests in investigating matters or subpoenaing records. Judges and members of Congress also fall into a special FBI category because of the Constitution's separation of powers. The FBI and Justice Department have therefore created specific rules governing agents' actions involving special circumstances professionals, which include high-level approval and review. There are also special rules for subpoenaing journalists. If the executive branch, and by extension the courts that enforce these privacy protections, observe the need for such sensitivity, it seems reasonable that Congress should have similar guardrails ensuring the powers of the state are equally and fairly applied. House Intelligence Committee Chairman Adam Schiff apparently doesn't see things that way. His committee secretly authorized subpoenas to AT&T earlier this year for the phone records of President Trump's personal attorney, Rudy Giuliani, and an associate. He then arbitrarily extracted information about certain private calls and made them public. By the way, remember, AT&T is owned by the same people as CNN. So that was in the Devin Nunes lawsuit. So he mentioned that. Many of the calls Mr. Schiff chose to publicize fell into the special circumstances categories: a fellow member of Congress, Devin Nunes, the Intelligence Committee's ranking Republican, two lawyers, Mr. Giuliani and fellow Trump lawyer Jay Sekulow, and a journalist, me. More alarming, the released phone calls involve figures who have sometimes criticized or clashed with Mr. Schiff. I wrote a story raising questions about his contacts with Fusion GPS founder Glenn Simpson, a key figure in the Russia probe, that brought the California Democrat unwelcome scrutiny. Mr. Nunes has been one of Mr. Schiff's main Republican antagonists, helping to prove the exaggerated claims of Trump-Russia election collusion were unsubstantiated. Mr. Sekulow and Giuliani represent Mr. Trump, who is Mr. Schiff's impeachment target. Mr. Schiff's actions in obtaining and publicizing private phone records trampled the attorney-client privilege of Mr. Trump and his lawyers. It intruded on my First Amendment rights to interview and contact figures like Mr. Giuliani and the Ukrainian-American businessman Lev Parnas without fear of having the dates, times, and length of private conversations disclosed to the public. Contrary to Mr. Schiff's defense, that he was simply serving the investigative interests of Congress, the release of the phone records served much more to punish people whose work Mr. Schiff found antagonistic than to fulfill an oversight purpose, and it served Congress poorly because it spread false insinuations. Mr. Schiff's report suggested, for instance, that Mr. Giuliani called the White House to talk to the Office of Management and Budget, implying he might have been trying to help Mr. Trump withhold aid to Ukraine, as Democrats allege. The White House says that claim is wrong. The number was a generic phone entry point, and no one in OMB talked to Mr. Giuliani. Likewise, Mr. Schiff published call records between Mr. Giuliani and me and suggested they involved my Ukraine stories. Many contacts I had with Mr. Giuliani involved interviews on the Mueller report and its aftermath, or efforts to invite the president's lawyer on the Hill's TV show, which I supervised. Mr. Schiff's team has tried to minimize the conduct because he never subpoenaed my phone records directly, but extracted them from others' call records. That defense is laughable. Once a journalist and his calls are made public through the powers of the surveillance state, there is an instant chilling effect on press freedom. I know this firsthand. In 2001 and 2002, when I was a reporter for the Associated Press, the Justice Department obtained my home phone records, and the FBI illegally seized my mail without a warrant in an effort to unmask my sources on federal corruption and stop publication of a story about the government's counterterrorism failures before 9/11. In the end, the FBI returned my reporting records, apologized to me privately, and announced new rules to avoid a repeat for other journalists. Yet by that time, many of my longtime sources had told me they had chosen not to contact me for fear of being detected. Others would only meet in person, concerned that my phones were wiretapped. Similarly, in the days since Mr. Schiff's phone record release, I have had people who openly talked to me on the phone this year suddenly asked to communicate only by encrypted apps. They don't want their names splashed in the next congressional report, and they fear a bipartisan open season on phone records of political opponents in the future. Representative Mike Turner, who is a Republican from Ohio, a member of the Intelligence Committee, tells me he's drafting legislation to put guardrails on future congressional subpoenas for phone records. That's a good start, but more needs to be done sooner. Mr. Schiff appears to assume that Congress enjoys unlimited investigative powers under the Constitution's speech or debate clause. He does not. I recommend the chairman examine the record in McShirley v. McClellan, a 2-decade legal battle that began in 1967 and pitted a powerful committee chairman against a liberal activist couple in Kentucky. It is widely regarded, along with the McCarthy hearings of the 1950s, as one of the most egregious episodes of misconduct in the modern history of congressional oversight. Now, I haven't checked that one out yet. I'd like to go look at it, though. In one of the final appellate decisions in that topsy-turvy case, the U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia ruled that congressional oversight isn't boundless and that the speech or debate clause has limits. The final paragraph of that ruling derided a, quote, sorry chapter of investigative excess. The judges wrote that their decision, quote, can only stand as a small reaffirmation of the proposition that there are bounds to the interference that citizens must tolerate from the agents of their government, even when such agents invoke the mighty shield of the Constitution and claim official purpose to their conduct. That principle is due for another affirmation. So, this is the situation that we have here, that Schiff overstepped his boundary. And not only that, but this is what's been going on with this whole congressional hearing and all these different things that are going on. This has been just a series of overstepping the congressional bounds. And as I've said before, it's really usurping the power of the executive branch. And that's what we're seeing play out right now. This is a battle. And for those who are saying that President Trump should just, let it go, have the Senate just do this cursory thing and say, we don't see any reason to do this, and so dismiss it. This impeachment trial has to happen in the Senate. And the reason it has to happen, and it needs to be a full-blown trial where President Trump gets to present all of his side of the story. It has to happen. And the major reason it has to happen is to stop people like Adam Schiff and all the others that are power grabbing right now. And they're trying to take over and make the legislative branch the most important and the most powerful of the three branches, because they don't like the idea that there are three equal branches. So the legislative has been trying to take the power from the executive. And not only that, but they've kind of teamed up with the judicial branch too. And there have been a lot of lawsuits that never should have taken place. And a lot of things have, been ruled against Trump, but then by the time they get to the Supreme Court, that's when they're struck down, because we do have a majority in the Supreme Court right now. And one thing I wanted to share with you on this, I've been really puzzling over why they're pushing so fast. Why is it the Democrats seem to be in such a hurry to get this done before the end of the year? And I'm not sure that I have the total answer on that, but there are a few things that are going to change, later on. And one of them happens to be that Trey Gowdy is going to come on to the Trump team after the first of the year. So that could be very interesting. Now, I'm not sure exactly what date that will be, but it should be fairly early in January. And I'm really sure the Democrats do not want to have to face Trey Gowdy in a case, because they know how he is, and they know how when he gets into a witness, he will tear the witness to pieces, shred him. So I think they don't want to face that, and that's a possibility. Another thing that's going to happen sometime in 2020, and I think it's probably going to be in March, because Ruth Bader Ginsburg has said that she wants to stay on the Supreme Court until after her birthday, which is March 15th. And I think this is probably what's going to happen, that she will continue on until that date, and then she will step down. But by then, it'll be so late in the year that the Democrats will, point at Merrick Garland, and they'll say, oh, see, you wouldn't let Obama appoint him because it was an election year, so you can't appoint anybody to take her place. Part of the problem is, as you watched in another one of my videos, we have a Supreme Court Chief Justice right now who is very involved in this whole FISA thing. And now that the FISA report is out, we can see that there were some definite abuses with the FISA court. Now, obviously, some of them were the, FBI agents that lied to the FISA court. But also, there should have been some question that, like, the judges that were presiding over those courts should have said something. And especially as the news started coming out that these things were not true. If I were a judge presiding over something like that, and I gave the go-ahead for a warrant, and then later on down the line, I found out that that warrant was based on a fake dossier, then, I'd say something. But none of these judges have said anything. And I believe the reports that just came out says that each of the Carter Page renewals was by a different judge. Now, we don't know who the judges were on the other three FISAs, which still people are not talking about. And I find that, really strange, because it's like in the first paragraph, it talks about there being 4 FISAs. And, I was saying that for a long time, that there definitely was one on Flynn. And I think the one on Flynn was probably you know what they say, a cover your butt type thing, because I think they were surveilling Flynn long before President Trump was elected, because Flynn was dangerous. And Obama knew that. That's why he ousted him, because Flynn knows what the score is. He knows where the bodies are buried, and he is a good and honest man. and he's not going to stand for it. He wants justice. Yeah, they wanted to get rid of him fast. I think they were not worried about it until Hillary lost. And then all of a sudden they were like, oh, we got to get this fixed. So it'd be very interesting to find out exactly what the date was that they got that. That's just my thoughts on that. But, this whole thing with Justice Roberts, we know that he's been controlled, okay? We saw that, the first time I saw it was when he voted against the Obamacare, or he upheld it, I guess, not against it, for it. And I think that was probably the first time that I realized that somebody had gotten to the guy. My question is, are they really pushing it because they're afraid that somewhere along the line in this whole Durham thing, that he's going to be taken out? If Chief Justice Roberts was deeper involved in the FISA abuse, like if he was part of that and complicit, he could be removed from the Supreme Court. And if he's removed, that could really upset the apple cart. And, what's going to happen? Because then it would put us back to 4-4. And so then if Ruth Bader Ginsburg, something happens to her and she can't participate, they could be in real trouble. As long as Roberts is on there, then they can, still have that control over what he does. And if he's the one to preside over the Senate impeachment trial, maybe that is what they're counting on to control what happens in that. I don't know. That's just the thought. I don't know that the Chief Justice really does much there. I mean, I think, the senators are like the jury. So it's not like the judge makes the decision about the guilt or innocence of the person. But in this case, he could manipulate some things. So I don't know if the deep state really wants him in there for the impeachment part, or I don't know. Those are just some thoughts that I was thinking about, and I thought I'd share them with you. I'd be interested to hear what you guys have to say down below, and, let me know. So that's what I've got for you on this one. I want to thank you guys for supporting me, everything that you've been doing. I mean, I have so many wonderful people who have helped me out on Patreon, and I have people who have donated to me through PayPal. And I even have some that are sending me Christmas cards, which is wonderful. So I'm going to get some Christmas cards right back to them. If you want to get a Christmas card from me, you're going to have to do it kind of hurry. Send it to my P.O. box, which is down in the description. And when I get it, I will write a nice little Christmas card back to you. So there you go. I also have some special other things that I'm working on, but there's just no way I can implement it before Christmas. So it's going to have to be like a January surprise, okay? I thought I could get it done, but it's just not working out. But January for sure, I'll let you know. So stay tuned. And the book should be coming out soon, but probably not before Christmas either. So it looks like a 2020 version. So that's it for tonight. I want to thank you for stopping by, and I'll see y'all later.